We ready? We ready, Jay? I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Tom Prickett, Chair of the Zoning Hearing Board. To my far right, we'll work our way over, is Kathy Landock, who's a stenographer. Then moving this way, Kira Sheridan, who's the Secretary of the Zoning Hearing Board. To my immediate right is Lauren Anderson, the Vice Chairman. And to my left is Christopher Volz with the firm Tucker Ahrensberg, and he is the Zoning Hearing Board Solicitor. I'd like to receive a motion to approve the minutes from the most recent meeting of May 16, 2022.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone who plans to give testimony this evening or make a presentation, would you please come forward and stand so that you can be sworn in, please?
Raise your right hand to be sworn, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We have no old business. Our new business this evening is application 2022-0011, Mr. Slovic, and the location is 618 Use Bishop Road. Usually our variance requests are pretty easy for us to get our hands around, in that it's requests for a variance for a pool's location or a shed or a size differentiation, those type of things, pools, as you can appreciate, and where they're located. This one we had a little more difficulty, and so if you could take us by the hand, and you're welcome to come to the podium and use the mic, but if you can kind of walk us through what this special exception is. We're aware from the material you provided us and the diagram that basically it's the business on the first floor, apartments, I think, on the second, and we're not sure if there's a third floor, so if you can walk us through that. We're under the impression there are multiple stories. We think there might be multiple entrances too, whether you can go in through the business and into the apartments, or there's another entrance or entrances to the apartments. But if you can kind of walk us through as much detail, it would be much appreciated. And then take us by the hand as far as what the special exception is that you'd really like. We're aware that obviously there are code specifics to non-residential use of parking lots. But I think in this case, what we're talking about is a residential use, an apartment use of a parking lot.
Okay, so this is, my name's Kerry Kreider from HMT. So this was the old Bunny's Tavern.
Okay.
And the bottom floor was the bar. Upstairs was apartments, okay?
2 apartments.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So the special exception that we're asking for now is to provide 4 one-bedroom apartments downstairs and 2 two-bedroom apartments upstairs. The under your ordinances, under special exception, the use is less evasive or less stringent with an apartment as opposed to what you could have there, catering services, laundries, convenience stores, daycare centers, all of that stuff is a use by right in that district.
For the, like, when you look at the plan, would each of those apartments have their own independent entry and doorway, or?
The upstairs too, yes, and then the downstairs, kind of a corridor type scenario.
So the bar's going away altogether?
That's correct. Yes,
The bar no longer exists now, correct?
correct, correct.
I mean, it's there, but it's closed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But not operational.
It is not.
Do you have final plans for what you plan, like a final layout for what you plan to do, or is that still a
Not
work?
at this point, but it's basically taking the square and dividing it into into 4 units in the bottom with a corridor.
Questions the committee might have?
Sure.
Tom Cassiola. I had an interest in it because my grandfather used to own the bar. It was Roseanne's Tavern or bar at the time, and Joey Slovik's father took it over, and it became Bunny's Tavern. But anyhow, the 2 apartments upstairs, they were always upstairs, always there from when the building was built. The bar was downstairs, it was Roseanne's Tavern, and there was 2 apartments upstairs. They each have their own entrance, one at the back of the building, one at the front, so they're 2 separate apartments. They've always been there. Like Kerry said, Joe wants to make 4 one-bedroom apartments downstairs. There'll be a front door and a back door and a corridor through it, so there'll be 4 on each side. But the reason he needs a special exception is because when you lay apartments out there side by side, the ordinance allows, as use by right, garden apartments and townhouses. And it specifically says townhouses, they have to be a stacked wall. Like normally townhouses, your bedroom, your living room, bedroom, 2 or 3 stories this way with a common separating wall. Garden apartments, they have to have their own, every unit has to have its own entrance. So he didn't qualify for either of those 2 permitted uses.
Well, wait, sorry, Tom, 1 second. So the way definition is here, he just said a garden apartment, they all have to have their own entrance. But this says a garden apartment where all dwelling units share a common entrance. So do we know which one it is in the ordinance? What's the definition?
I think what Tom was saying is he didn't qualify as a as a garden apartment, and he
Right,
didn't
doesn't
qualify
meet the
as a
definition. It was
townhome.
determined by the zoning officer that he didn't meet it, and Kerry didn't
Well, it's like the
disagree.
downstairs
It sounds like the
meets the
downstairs kind of
definition
does.
of a garden apartment. The upstairs,
But it's one building.
Yeah.
That was her, I guess,
Right, we're not appealing Liz's determination. You're just saying it's so close.
well, not exactly. That's why, I mean, it doesn't qualify under the specific definition of a townhouse because they're not vertical walls stacked, and it doesn't qualify as a garden apartment because they won't all have their own separate entrances. So the ordinance allows for a special exception. And it says, uses of the same general character, and this is under section C of the C3 commercial, village commercial. If you want to find that for a second before I read it. It's not section 909. My book's on page 146. I don't know what Carrie's a little different. You see 909?
While they're looking, while Kara's looking,
Was that 909C1,
Yes, yes.
C3?
Yeah, that's what he's looking for, special exception under C1A.
wait, so, but this is a C3 district.
right, it's commercial 3.
Yeah, but the section.
The section is C. Okay, sorry, you were confusing me.
909C1.
To back up, are there apartments there now? Is there anybody living there right
Both
now?
apartments upstairs are occupied.
Occupied
Yeah,
upstairs,
They've always
okay.
been, yes.
And fully, if the development were to occur with the 4 one-bedroom and the 2 one-bedroom upstairs, 4 bedrooms downstairs, or 4 apartments downstairs and 2 apartments, 4 downstairs and 2 upstairs, is there adequate parking?
Well, that's what we're going to get to next. We're just trying to get a determination from the zoning hearing board of comparable use not specifically listed. So
So
that's what Carrie's asking first.
let me ask this question. Are there any proposed changes to the second floor?
For the what?
The second floor apartments, are
No.
there any proposed changes?
I'll make it, okay.
So I mean, and I'd like an opinion on this, but I mean, really, the first floor part of it kind of is a garden apartment because it's one entrance, and that's what this says on here. Share a common entrance, 3 or more sharing a common entrance. This would be 4 apartments entering in the first floor.
But Liz's issue was, but there's already apartments upstairs that don't share one, so she said we should come to the zoning hearing board.
But, the question is if that, can you agree to something being adhering to a type on the bottom floor and the top floor is grandfathered into some old thing? Because
Non-conforming.
But you don't need to. I mean, if you, the ordinance says uses of the same general character as any of the uses listed or permitted by right, et cetera, shall be allowed after determination of the zoning hearing board that the impact of the proposed use on the environment and adjacent properties is equal to or less. So your just determination is a bar, is a apartments less severe than a bar or a fire station or a club or lodge or fraternity organization or a convenience store, all those permitted C3. And I think it's an obvious answer that an apartment's less than fire stations and those ones that I listed. So that's just it's a determination question.
Well, my head's where you're at, because the upstairs is existing, you're not doing
Yes.
anything with that. The downstairs meets the definition of a garden apartment.
correct. That's.
I think what they're saying, though, is that Liz told them, no, that you don't qualify as a use by right.
Because,
So-
by the
so-
letter of the law, it doesn't.
And their point is that because we're so close, rather than challenge Liz's determination, will you give us a special exception to allow this hybrid type of a living arrangement?
And there are two parts to your presentation this evening, or request. One is specific to the units, and then the other is specific to parking, correct?
It's a shared parking.
Okay.
And we'll get to that. I mean, they're two separate
I
issues.
think we want to deal with them separately, correct, Chris?
Entrance
Is parking here tonight?
Yes, yeah, Liz,
it's really
she said
just
she'd write it on the application whenever he
It's
asked for it. It's just it was called either determination on the shared parking. There's this word in there that she had a issue with, and she says, I need to know what the zoning hearing board, how they interpret that word.
So real quick, before we go to that part, there's no intention for this to be higher than the current 2 stories that it is today.
Right, no changes on the walls, he's just gonna gut the inside.
Internally, that's all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions by committee? Any other, I'm sorry?
No, I was gonna say not on this specific issue.
Okay, and we'll wait to go to parking. Any other questions or comments from council?
Not for me, no.
I'd make a motion that we grant the request for a special exception of the 4 one-bedroom apartments downstairs and of the 2 one-bedroom apartments upstairs as described in the application and at the hearing, subject to the following conditions. 1, the performance standards specified in Part 16 of this chapter. 2, Section 615D pertinent to landscaping. 3, Section 608B pertinent to sidewalks. 4, Section 1303B pertinent to parking. 5, in addition, for the area required for parking, and actually, we should probably hold that, shouldn't we, on the presentation, or include that?
Well,
I think we might need to discuss the parking and other question
So
before
that's
we.
the thing, I mean, we're gonna have an issue if we're doing more than just the special exception tonight, because all that was advertised was the special exception request.
But according to what we're saying here, if, like, for example, number 5 there was, in addition, for the area that's required for parking, put that to the side, right? Here, there shall also be a minimum of 500 square feet of usable yard area per dwelling unit for outdoor activities for the residents. And according to what I see on this diagram, is that something that we can adhere to even if we do approve this exception? I mean, I'm just saying it might be a moot point if we approve this, if we know that they can't adhere to the other conditions, you know what I'm saying?
So it's important you hear all 6 conditions to the approval. I'll repeat it for you, and that is, item 5, in addition for the area required for parking, here shall be a minimum of 500 square feet of usable yard area per dwelling unit for outdoor activities of the residents. Can that be met? minimum of 500 square feet of usable yard area per dwelling unit.
560,000
Yes,
square feet.
yes.
Give me 1 second.
He owns all this too. Yeah.
It will be close. I don't have a, you know what I mean, to sit in and figure every out.
Right. We can, assuming the motion gets seconded, then we can vote on it, and then if you're able to meet the conditions, fine. If not, then obviously. And item 6, sections 1405, section A and 4, and section 1408A, and that's specific to signs. Is there a second to that motion?
Hold on 1 second, please.
So, I got the language.
But this isn't going to be the case anymore, is what he's saying.
Right.
There's not gonna
But
be
it's something similar, that's why I included. You
A
don't
business.
use it, you don't.
Because we don't think they can make. Right. We just take off condition 5.
So you would second it with the condition that we
Five.
take out section
Strike
5?
condition 5.
Is there a second to the motion with the condition that we delete section 5 and make section 6 section 5?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So that carries unanimously. We'll move now to the parking aspect.
So what was this switch from 6 to 5?
We deleted, in addition, for the area required for parking, there shall be a minimum of 500 square feet of usable yard area per dwelling unit for outdoor activities of the residents. That was deleted. And then we just moved section 6, which is 1405A and 4, and 1408A, specific to signs.
So you still need to adhere to landscaping, sidewalks, parking, and signage as per that.
So that motion is approved unanimously. We'll move to parking issues.
He can explain the parking on it, and I'm just here to ask about the shared parking, what the township allows for shared parking on adjacent property. He can show you all the parking spaces he has on his site plan.
Okay.
I don't know that.
So, yeah, let me get my, so shared parking, it says a group of non-residential uses may provide joint parking area if the number of the spaces in the area at least equals the aggregate of the spaces required for the uses.
Right, for residential. Or non-residential.
Correct. So, I guess the determination needs to be made. The apartments, while the building itself is, or the residents thereof are residential, the use or the anything that you would submit for that falls under commercial.
So I think, tell me if this is what you're asking. Do you have to adhere to the parking rules for commercial or the parking rules for residential? Yeah,
Sharing only is the only part of that we're talking about.
See, right now, he owns 2 buildings, And there's a big space in between. And Kerry shows he has plenty of parking spaces. He has like 6 garages for pull-in for the apartments, all 6 individual, there's 6, right? Individual single-car garages that will go to the apartments, but they're all on one big parcel with his 2 buildings. So he doesn't basically have enough around that building without encroaching on the adjacent building that he owns. I thought you have a site plan, Kerry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the property line is almost in the middle. Right. Goes through the garage.
Right.
So technically, those end of the garage is on the other parcel,
Right.
okay?
Yep.
So that's what we're,
And there are 6 spots in the garage. So where did the people that live on the second floor of the
entire site is paved.
Yeah, I've seen the site,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and so everybody that lives there now parks in that garage, is that correct?
Or outside.
Or
either-
outside.
Either or.
And so you're talking about having to have some actual physical marked stalls
Yeah,
somewhere.
we could get plenty if that part of the garage that's on the other property,
Mhm.
if we can use that as ours, because, and that's what I'm saying, is it shared parking? Because part of the garage is on the other parcel.
And he owns both
He
parcels.
does. He does.
And he wants to give those garages to the apartments, but right now with that line going down, that's the dilemma, that technically you can't apply those 2 spots to the.
Well, is there a reason we can't move the property line over?
Yeah, can you consolidate the 2 parcels?
Can't
One.
consolidate.
No, because you can't have both of those structures on one parcel, but can you move this line down and like move the property line so that it really does line up with the edge of the garage? Or is there some other dimensional variance you're gonna require for that?
That would require side yard setback and rear yard setback.
I mean, I'd be more comfortable with side and rear yard setback dimensional variances than the shared parking. Because what happens if you want to sell that piece of property and then, he wants to sell that piece of property at some point in the future, and that's the problem for the person who wants to sell it, right? That there's going to be issues with, hey, now I got these apartment people using my property and on my property. At least this is my opinion, obviously, that's my opinion. Everybody else on the board can give their opinion. I'd be more comfortable with moving the property line and asking for a dimensional variance on the front and side setbacks versus allowing for shared parking between 2 parcels that maybe in some point in the future, he might want to sell one of those and not the other. Because it puts the apartment people in a bad position too, right? That they could get knocked out of, now we only have 4 garage bays instead of whatever, and then we're in a problem situation with parking.
Nobody can knock them out, he owns them. If he decides to sell, then he would have to then do that subdivision. If he wants to sell, he'd have to get it. Right now, he doesn't really have to, if he has enough spaces. It's simpler, we thought, just to let him share parking, because he owns it all. If he ever down the line wants to sell, then he'll go to the planning commission for a subdivision and create 2 new lots out of it. But right now, he owns it all, it's all paved, it looks like all one lot. And the ordinance actually says that if it said, a group of non-residential uses may provide a joint parking area, like Kerry read, if the numbers match. So that simple sentence, he does meet that.
Yeah, but if the lot on the left could be perceived as a non-residential use, the lot on the right is not it's a house. It's a single house, a single-family dwelling, correct? At least, the picture that I took over there is it looks like one entrance,
the application.
but it's a duplex.
Yeah, there's an apartment upstairs and an apartment downstairs. It's always been, even when my grandfather owned it.
Hey, Tom, has Liz made a ruling on this?
Yeah, she said they should come here.
When
It'd
did
be
she say
easier.
that? Because I was talking with Liz like last week or the week before about this question. And my understanding is that she has not even made a determination yet. And I'm just looking, I just don't want to tie things up because I'm just looking at the application and it's just for the special exception to be treated as a comparable use. right? Like, I don't see a determination from Liz or a referral to us to rule on for here,
For the parking.
for the parking issue.
Oh, I guess she had told me, she said he asked her about shared parking. She says, well, unless the zoning hearing board determines that's you're gonna be allowed to do that, she said she can't.
When did
Well,
she say that?
I guess when he was applying up here, he had called me also on that day when he was making his application, because they weren't sure about it. And I called Dan Dizeroff, and he says that the zoning hearing board should have to make that decision. And I guess the issue isn't really what we're looking at, I gotta wait till there.
I think we have a bit of a horns of a dilemma in that, per se, it was not presented for us to act
All right, well,
on the
Chris,
parking portion.
Tom, let me just say this, though, that the determination isn't really for this application. It's for, that if a group of non-residential uses, that you can do shared parking. If the zoning board considers that residential, then there's no chance of doing shared parking anyhow. So that's the issue. It's not about this particular application. It's about our ordinance book, just to give her a definition of that.
So you're saying a question about the ordinance versus making any kind of ruling?
Right. No, wait, one more thing, though. Years ago, whenever the South Point first went in, there was a section laid out for those apartments, and they were called the apartments. That, what's his name from Ohio? Ron Sabatino owned that. He was able to get tax abatement. And tax abatement was only for commercial and industrial lots in South Point. It was not for any residential lots like Ironwood or the Fairways Landings apartments. So he applied, and I came to a zoning hearing board and got a determination that his use is a commercial.
I mean, I can kind of start to get on board with the idea of the apartment building on the left being commercial, but I'm not so convinced for the house that's just a duplex that looks like a house from the road being commercial. It's a house. It's whether there's two people who live there or not, when you look at it from the road, it looks like a residence. It looks like a single-family residence. This building with bunnies on the bottom, it doesn't look like a house. It looks like more like an apartment, more like a commercial use. So that's kind of where I'm hung up with, and I know this isn't like a factual interpretation, but I think there's a fine line there between what is considered commercial, what is considered residential, and I can kind of, like I said, get on board with the property on the left, because that makes sense to me. It looks like, I can envision in my mind that thing being changed around a little bit that looks like an apartment building and is considered commercial.
That's what we're asking for. Shared parking for that building.
But between this property and the property on the right, it has to be two non-residential properties sharing.
But that's what we're asking.
Do you know what I'm saying?
But, I mean, just because an apartment looks like a house, I know it looks like a single-family house, but.
A duplex is not an apartment. A duplex is two people living in one house, you know what I mean? It's not
Wait, say it again?
an apartment is three or more dwelling units. It specifically says the definition of apartment is fully contained units with three or more dwelling units.
What's it say for duplex?
A duplex, hold on, that one's not in this one, but stand
It's under
by.
definitions.
It's a two-family dwelling, I think is what it.
Right, which is what it is.
Does it, and they have their own separate entrances.
Wait,
They're-
hold on,
They're
hold on
completely
now.
separate.
Looking at definitions,
Yeah,
it's under D dwellings, and then it breaks them out into the
Yeah.
various types.
okay.
My grandmother lived in the lower apartment until she died, and then that part got rented out after she passed.
See, it's funny because it doesn't, it calls it a two-family dwelling. A two-family dwelling is a residential building containing two independent dwelling units, each having a separate entrance, and which is the only principal building on the lot. So what I'm saying is, even though the left can be considered apartment, the one on the right, I don't think we can consider an apartment because it's a two-family dwelling. It looks like a house. If somebody didn't know and you didn't tell me, it could have just been one person living there. So it looks like a residence.
There's no connection between them. They have their own entrances. It meets the definition of a duplex, no matter what the architecture is.
I mean,
it's still-
we don't have a definition of duplex. We have a definition of two-family dwelling, unless it's somewhere else, Chris, defined in the ordinance, but the one I'm looking at says two-family dwelling.
Well, he'd conceded it's a two-family dwelling. I mean, two families have always lived in it. There's, like I said, there's no connection.
Right, but you know what do you understand what I'm saying, though? Like,
Because of how it looks.
there's a single-family dwelling, there's a two-family dwelling, and then there's a separate category, multifamily dwellings. That's where apartments go, that's where garden apartments go, that's where townhouses go. Like, to me, a two-family dwelling like that looks more like a single-family home than it does an apartment, right? It is the way that it looks. It's like putting, there's a possibility that somebody could come back and say, I just want to live in that house, right? It's a house, and I'll make some renovations, and it becomes a single-family home again. You're not going to do that with the garden apartment. You're not going to do that with bunnies and above bunnies. I guess that's what my point is. It's trying to, I have a hard time considering the property on the right a commercial use, just because two people happen to live there.
Well, you know, a lot of people, all those houses in use were built as duplexes. And a lot of people bought both and they tore out the middle wall.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So, yeah, someday someone could buy it and turn it into a single family again. But right now, I mean, it's always been a duplex apartments for the owners. For the bunnies, is when he owned it and when my grandmother.
So the people in the duplex, where do they park right now? They park in the house, like in front of the house? They don't use the garage?
Yeah, like there's the red truck that's parked right.
So, yeah. So,
Tom, you've been on the, why does that section of the code, why is it limited to non-residential uses as far as sharing parking?
I don't know. But it could have very well said, instead of a group of non-residential uses, it could have said a group of commercial uses. I mean, non-residential means commercial.
Why exclude residential, though?
I don't know. But Liz sees it's excluded. But that's all we're saying, is that if the zoning here takes a position that an apartment building is a commercial operation for the owner, maybe not for the occupants, but for the owner, that's a business for him. He doesn't live there, he rents it out, he collects rent every month.
Yeah, I mean, I guess,
Couldn't anybody who rents a property say that they're a commercial use then?
yes, that's what I was gonna say.
Like, what makes an apartment special from a,
Well, because most apartments are in residential zones. This is a commercial zone. I mean, it's in commercial zone, it's C3, and it's always been our rental units.
so maybe,
So, I mean, yeah, if I owned a house on a residential, yeah, maybe I'd say, I'm renting it out to you, I'd be hard pressed to say that that's a commercial operation on a residential zone, on a residential house, just because I'm renting it out to you.
so your argument is that because this isn't a commercially zoned area, that it could be treated as a commercial use, whereas a similar property in a residential area would not get such
I
treatment?
wouldn't think it should. I guess that's all we're asking the board. That's why it's not really pertinent to this site. It's just a question that Liz did, you know, she says that I can't say that it's a commercial operation.
I mean, I guess the thing, though, like, if you think of commercial properties sharing a parking lot, like, I feel like that's what it was intended for. So non-residential, meaning like, oh, hey, if I have this store here and this bar over here, just like down in Oakdale, for example, there's like a little convenience store and a couple other businesses around there, and they all share the same parking lot. You know, they might only own their certain parcels, but for me, it's like, I don't really get, I wouldn't think that it makes sense for someone who lives in a residence to share with a commercial property, even if that commercial property is where people are living. Like, there's gonna be, you know, upwards of 16 maybe people who might be wanting to park there. And then what happens if you have that single-family home and now people are gonna wanna park where you need to have your own parking spots, for example?
We can designate spaces, but I think right now it exists indiscriminate mixing of uses while it was a bar with all the apartments above it and beside it. So now it would be just all residential apartments. So there's no more, at least no more indiscriminate mixing of it. So so where they park, it's just like a parking lot between two apartment buildings, basically. So that's all they were asking for, is or he was asking for to get a determination.
Re-advertise and let Liz know. This is how we might be rolling.
I tell you what, we have a bit of a discomfort, not just me, but the board members and council, in that this part of it, the parking part of it, was not advertised.
Okay.
And so what we'd prefer to do, as opposed to make a motion, whether it is approved or not, is to defer it to next meeting, advertise that portion of the request for interpretation, and deal with it at the next meeting.
All right. Well,
And
so-
maybe Liz will make an interpretation between now and then, too. That would be included in this.
But is this, you're saying it's gonna be interpretation for this spot or just for the ordinance, like for the township ordinance? Like, what's the determination?
The determination will be how Liz interprets the ordinance applied to your, to
Okay,
the
all right,
property at
so-
issue.
So yours would be specifically to this? Okay.
I tell you what, I'll make a motion, but it may not be seconded, or if it is, it may not be approved. And that is, I make a motion to approve an interpretation of application 2022-0011 as one for non-residential commercial use due to its unique characteristics. Is there a second to that motion? And there is not a second, so it fails to
Gotcha.
be reviewed for approval. So we'll go forward with advertising this, getting Liz to make an interpretation before the next meeting, and then addressing the issue at that time.
All right, we'll make sure the applicant goes to see her tomorrow and see if she can come up with something. If not, then we have to follow through again.
Okay? Thank you. Yes, sir. If there's no other business, I would look for a motion of adjournment.
I actually, well, so just to clarify, on the next zoning board meeting, we're going to advertise for both the approval of the application as well as, because there's really no sense in approving the use unless we know they can adhere to the parking requirements. So putting them into the same meeting would make sense. Is that what the plan is?
We've approved,
He can cut down the apartments, I'm only gonna put 2 lots there. And he'd have enough on his own lot, he wouldn't need to share anything.
So-
Let him make a determination if for some reason Liz doesn't agree and then you guys don't agree.
Okay.
so,
The first one should stand.
the first one stands.
First one
Yeah, we
stands,
made
yeah.
that rolling
Yep.
stands. You'll get a written letter in the mail tomorrow or the next day. The way I anticipated this parking issue going is that Liz will give them a written determination, and if they disagree with it, we'll be here next month.
To talk about the parking
To review Liz's determination on the parking issue.
Okay.
And, there's several, if Liz disagrees with your interpretation, there's several avenues you could take. One, you could just say she's wrong, or two, you could potentially ask for a variance saying, given the unique circumstances of this property, that commercial requirement shouldn't apply here. So, just things to consider. But, we might not be here depending on Liz's determination, we might not even be
May
here
not
next
even
month.
deal with this
Right.
next month.
Liz might say, I agree with you guys, and,
That's actually the way, I don't know when things are coming back. So he'll get to her before the deadline for
Yeah.
putting an ad in.
I think there's a question from the audience. Okay. Okay. Anything else on this issue? Any other questions or comments specific to this?
Well, I guess one thing we normally do is ask if anybody here is to give an opinion about this particular, no, there's nothing regarding this topic. Okay.
If you'd like to step forward and identify yourself by name and address, please, and you're welcome to use the podium.
Good evening, David Lloyd, Village of Gilmore. I'm looking for determination on some property that has been, I believe, we had a zoning hearing about 2 years ago. I believe the property is 3927, owned by Don Fuchs. He tried to rezone it as commercial, and I believe you upheld it as village, it stayed residential village. I
Sorry.
think it's.
Do you know what the property address is?
I think it's 3927. If you go over the train tracks where Weavertown was,
Is it the storage yard?
it's
Or
the
what he
big,
claimed was a
not
storage
down
yard?
below, not behind it, but stay on Miller's Run. There's just a single garage and then a big level lot. Are we familiar? You know what we're talking about?
But wait, they did rule that this top board of supervisors turned it down, the application. They don't hear zoning change requests.
So I'm in the wrong venue?
No.
Okay, so my question is, I thought it was upheld that it would stay as residential village. Right now, it's being used, there's a building that had been put in there over the weekend, a gigantic, I don't know what to call it, I could show you a picture of it. It was brought in on an oversized truckload. It was an all-day affair. They had a huge crane come in, pick it up and set it on barrels, and it's sitting there. Is this a violation of, a zoning violation, as it's a village area being used as a commercial storage?
Tom, can I mention something?
Please.
The zoning board ruled on that. He asked for an exception to what Liz had ruled, and you guys upheld it, and it's in common.
Yeah, that's the one in Common Pleas right now, right?
Right. So he's saying that they're still operating up there.
Liz, our zoning officer, is not here tonight, but she is the one who investigates and makes determinations as to whether, or,
Oh, so the landowner asked for a variance or a special condition?
he asked for some relief several years ago, which we denied, and it's now in the Court of Common Pleas of Washington County, where it's been sitting for a year or so.
So he could still operate doing whatever then? I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, I'm just curious. That was an all-day affair with giant cranes and setting up and trucks. It was the biggest truck I've ever seen with an oversized load. I could show you this picture. It's huge.
Well, that's probably the guy you want to talk to, and, yep, he's,
Mr. King,
I
Jack
didn't know if
King.
this was the right venue or not. I thought I'd try, trying to do my due
no, that's,
diligence.
it's, thanks for bringing it to our attention, but the township's zoning department will determine if there is a violation. And
Okay.
so give all your facts to Jack King, and he and Liz will meet up when she gets back in town and
I will do
investigate
that.
from there.
All right, since I have you here, can I address another issue
Please.
quickly? I received a letter from 2 years ago from Heritage, which now operates where Weavertown was, saying that they're going to use they're applying for a permit to use the property for a non-hazardous waste transfer station 2 years ago. Last week I received another letter, the same exact letter. Apparently, ownership has changed, different names. Is that something that the zoning board will regulate? It says non-hazardous, but who's to say if it is hazardous, non-hazardous, hours of operation, spill plan, noise plan, because we are relatively close. That's why I received the letter. I'm downhill from whatever is potentially going to spill.
So what is your address?
3928 Miller's Run Road.
And you're in a residentially zoned
Correct.
district? And that
Correct.
property is in a commercially zoned district?
Correct.
Okay.
Behind us is? Yeah, up on the hill is, yes. The backyard.
I'm sorry, what is your name again?
David Lloyd.
David Lloyd. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess the short version is that something that you would regulate, or is that something DEP would regulate?
Well, they would have to get a permit to use property for a non-hazardous waste transfer station. But, and I can't quote what the zoning, you're allowed to do in that specific zone, but the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection would issue permits to allow a company to potentially use their property for that.
So that permit is not through you guys, it's through the.
The only way it would come before here is that if it wasn't zoned for that use.
Okay.
And what is the entity that's replaced Heritage?
Solid Oak. But the letter says, "Dear David, 5D Field Services informing you that 5DFS has applied for a permit to the DEP for a residual waste transfer facility to receive and process non-hazardous residual waste at its facility at 3866 Millers Run Road.
What is the use of the property today?
Actually, ever since Weavertown sold or went out of business, I don't know. If you look at Google Map Earth, it looks like a junkyard. I mean, I don't go up there, but I don't know what it's being used for.
Okay.
So I don't know if I wasted your time, but I'm
No,
trying to
not at
educate
all.
myself and make sure that my investment in Cecil Township stays the way it is.
No, I think part of what they need to do as part of their permit application to the DEP is to notify residents within a certain radius that they intend to apply for that permit. It gives you an opportunity to approach the DEP if you'd like to, and ask for more information within a certain amount of time. Whenever they send you those letters, you have within 30 or 45 days to contact the DEP, the local regional office, which probably would be in Pittsburgh, Southwest Regional Office, and say, hey, I got a letter. I'd like to get more information about what their permit is all about. You have that right.
Okay.
From a zoning perspective, not knowing what commercially zoned it is, I don't know off the top of my head if they're allowed to obviously do that on that zone. I figure if it's the old Weavertown property, I mean, Weavertown was an environmental company that dealt with water and waste prior to that, so I would assume that the use is comparable.
Okay. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for making us aware of that.
Would you like to see the picture of that building that's up on that property, since I have it and you're here? I don't know if you drive by it or not.
Would you like to see it, Jack?
Well, no, I'll talk
Yeah,
to
show-
Jack.
yeah,
All right,
show-
yeah,
show
I'm
it to
sorry.
Jack.
You did tell me to talk to
okay.
Jack. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for the committee? If not, I'd entertain a motion of adjournment.
I motion we adjourn?
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Yeah.